Veterinary medicine is a messy business, both physically and emotionally. Vetsplaining is one veterinarian's attempt to explain and understand her own profession a little better. Join Dr. Lisa McFadden as she delves deep into the medical and business aspects of veterinary medicine.
In this episode, I interviewed David Mervin, who is the other half of the Davids that founded PetWell. And don't forget to stay tuned at the end because we will have our first Pet Tales, which Pet Tales is this idea I had that was, we'll say, loosely borrowed from StoryCorps, which StoryCorps is a nonprofit organization that goes around the country and records everybody's stories, and they are stored forever in the National Archives. And I thought, who do we have the most pictures of in our, well, we used to carry photos in our wallets, but now on our phones? It is our kids and our animals. And so everybody has at least one, if not 1,000 silly little stories about our pets. And I thought the idea of collecting some of those and sharing them was kind of a neat concept. So throughout the month of May, at my appointments, any of my clients who felt like sharing any of their pet stories, whether they are living or have since transitioned, I recorded them, and then I will be playing them at the end of the podcast through the rest of the year. So I hope you guys enjoy. And then what I will probably do is compile all the stories into its own little podcast just so people can hear it. And maybe if I'm feeling saucy, I can be fancy like NPR is when they do the StoryCorps and put some music in the background. But we'll see. I'm still a supreme novice at the whole podcast concept. So getting back to my interview with David Mervin, here we go. Well, thank you for letting me force you.
No, this is awesome. Excited to be a part of it.
So what I'm going to do is I'll have you introduce yourself, and then you can talk about what you did before PetWell if you want, and then how you got into PetWell. And the way that I set this up is because I already finished David Strauss's podcast. It's going to be released on the 11th of April. And it's basically presenting from the idea of right now, everybody thinks of the concept of corporate medicine as this kind of like entity that has no face behind it, that has potentially negative effects on veterinary medicine. So I want to talk about how it has positive effects and add faces to what a parent company can look like. So I actually emailed basically most people at the Houston headquarters to get as many voices as I can to interview. So it's going to be like a series almost.
Cool.
Yeah, it's not like part one of whatever, because I don't know how many.
Cool.
Yeah.
I love that idea.
So what I talked to Strauss about was a little bit about what he did before PetWell, just kind of like in vague, and then how you guys kind of got together to do PetWell, and then he told me his role, and then we talked a little bit about like the culture of PetWell. So really we can cover the same topics. It's, whatever you, I want to have some structure, but not too rigid, just because I think that the spontaneity of it is what actually gives it personality.
Good.
Yeah. So if you want to go ahead and introduce yourself.
Sure. David Mervin, co-founder of PetWell Partners. And
what were you doing before you founded PetWell Partners?
I'd say my career progression started out in finance. I, out of school, went to work for private investment office. So you would call it a family office, doing private equity investments and a lot of early stage investing. And so as a young person coming out of college, it was really an awesome experience. I got to look at a lot of different companies, not only in terms of their financial statements and management team and strategy, really digging in on a large number of companies in a lot of different industries and sort of understanding the macro drivers of the industries around those individual companies. And it was a great experience for me. It felt like 10 years smashed into 3. And, I think it was a great prep for me, and kind of taking next steps in my career. From there, I wanted to get some on the ground operating experience, and had a unique opportunity to go lead a turnaround of a college that was struggling and in many ways, a mess. Board asked me to come in and, really lead the effort to clean it up and, turn it into um, a saleable business, or at the very least, a sustainable business. And so I thought that would be a really neat way to get some down and dirty operating experience and learn a new industry. That was meant to be a 24-month uh, process. It ended up taking us 48 months, but we finally got there. And again, that sort of felt like to me 10 years smashed into 4. When we reached the end of that project, David Strauss, my partner, had moved back to the United States from his 4 years in Europe. And we just started talking about building a company together. We're both certainly at the time we're young guys. We're still, I'd like to think, relatively young, but we were we were younger then. And we felt like we had a really long career in front of us and had some unique experiences thus far. And we wanted to build a company over a long-term time horizon that we could be really proud of. We just didn't know exactly what that would look like, and so we set out to do research and spent the better part of a year looking into a lot of different ideas. We started by writing down on a blank sheet of paper things that were important to us, whether it be strategy related topics, it could be values or culture related topics, it could be sort of inherent drivers. We just wrote down things that were important to us and then started to tailor our research to things that would check those boxes. And we really lucked into the veterinary profession. It started with literally just reading the word veterinarian in a 1,000-page research document on a completely unrelated field that triggered a thought. And that thought was, gosh, this is an industry that we hadn't thought about, but just at a 30,000 foot level would seem to check a lot of the boxes on our sheet. And so we just started learning more about it. And what we found was, you've got this awesome group of people who are driven by a really noble cause, and an industry that is in many ways, thousands of individual doctors kind of on their own islands. And we felt like there was an opportunity for us to, bring resources and bring, some of our learnings in other industries to kind of help them be more successful as a team than they could otherwise be as individuals. And so that was the premise that we started with. I'd say really it all started with attending NAVC when we were still in research mode. And when you go to these industry conferences, you learn a lot. You've got thousands of people that interface in an industry in kind of every nook and cranny. People who make a living doing everything that it takes to kind of pull off the day-to-day of the industry, and they're all in one room. And so we spent a half a day walking around talking to people. To say that we were on cloud 9 walking out of there would be an understatement. I mean, it was such a great day, and everyone we talked passionate about their work, um, excited, to be there, excited at the work that they were doing. And that's unique. I mean, I've been to dozens of different industry conferences, and never have I been to one that felt that way. And I know David's experience was the same. So we walked out of there and just said, all right, this is it. I mean, if we're going to build a company over a 20 plus year time horizon, I want to do it with people like that. and and that really started the ball rolling. And within a year of that, um, we were up and running with our first hospital or two.
And I asked David Strauss, but I'll ask you as well. Was it when you first started? I mean, because veterinarians are kind of a skeptical and hard bunch to warm up sometimes. And we get very wary of anything surrounding business, at least a vast majority of veterinarians. There are certain subset, like Tyler, I'll talk to, but who actually like the business aspect. But was it hard to get veterinarians to kind of open up, or was it a little bit easier because you were approaching it more from the perspective of helping people with their retirement dreams?
Yeah, definitely tough in the beginning. You have to remember in 2013, corporate was a lot less prevalent than it is today, and the level of skepticism was much higher than it is today, which is hard to believe because it was only 5 or 6 years ago. And I think there have been some major mind shift changes in that period of time. But no question, the first few years, one of our biggest challenges was overcoming the "who are you" and just the natural anti-corporate skepticism. And really, we spent our planning year talking to veterinarians about what are the things that they think could be valuable with quote unquote corporate, and what are the things that they really don't like. And it was through those we intentionally tried to take the things that are inherently positive about consolidation or um, professionalization or bringing resources to an industry. You could call that corporate if you want, but the positives that can come from that, while really keying in on some of the real negatives that don't have to be there. You know, Corporate can look a lot of different ways, and we wanted to tailor PetWell to one that veterinarians in particular would respond well to.
And when you were first starting out, how did you find the first clinic that you purchased? Did you just kind of look for, are there like classifieds for veterinarians who want to sell their practice? Like Tinder for
Tinder,
for veterinary
Tinder
practices?
for vets. No, although that's a great new business idea.
There you go.
Dr. McFadden. We should work on that.
Yeah.
I think so. So that landscape's changed a lot too. When we first started, there were there's a network of brokers that have been in the industry for quite a while. A lot of these are veterinarians themselves that have sold their practice, similar sales, kind of in their after practice careers, and they're still very active today. I'd say in the beginning, working with those brokers, we really had to overcome that barrier of corporate, because a lot of most of the brokers didn't want to work with corporate, and most of the sellers that they represent, that they represented and represent, had a very negative view of corporate. And so